Good afternoon and welcome to the Link Supply Chain's Masterclass series. Today's class is how to foster engaged, motivated, and responsible remote team members. My name is Ken Waddell. I'm publisher of Parcel Media. I'll be your moderator today. We appreciate all of you taking the time out of your day to attend with our goal of providing you with the information that will help you create your best business advantage. We hope to make this well worth your time. One quick housekeeping note. Today's event is being sponsored by both Link Supply Chains and Life in Balance. And just one more thing before we get started, I would like to introduce today's panel, which is made up of 3 industry experts. First, we have Rain Kansman, CEO and owner, personal coach, speaker, facilitator. His company, Life in Balance, offers retreats for next level leaders and has over 30 years of facilitating personal growth for thousands of leaders and organizations. Second, we have Lisa Dubbs, leader in the food and beverage industry with vast experience in sales and merchandising. Lisa has worked for Fortune 100 companies and private companies. Lisa is currently Vice President of Sales and Market Development for Link Supply Chains. And last but not least, Wade Wickus, CEO and co-founder of Link Supply Chains. Wade has over 30 years of experience in supply chains in both public and private companies. Link Supply Chains helps companies take the leap to digitization with their products, product management, and their consulting team focusing on simplifying supply chains with best-in-class solutions. So with all that, let's get things going and jump right into the class with Rain Kansman kicking things off. Take it away, Rain.
Thank you, Ken. Appreciate it. Ken introduced our topic. This is a focus on remote teams and how to lead them effectively. COVID forced a lot of companies' hands to work this way. And I think a lot of companies figured out that this could be an effective way to move on in the future. So we really don't see this changing a whole lot as we move forward. So as leaders, we need to adapt ourselves to meet those new needs. I was a remote employee for the last 6 years of my corporate life by choice. I appreciated the freedom of being able to work where and when I wanted to, with very clear expectations for my performance. I also looked for specific feedback on how I was performing against those expectations. In that way, I could work effectively. But I do have to say that I gave an expected respect from my direct uplink. However, my commitment really waned when either I was manipulated, lied to, ignored, and especially when I was micromanaged. So it's really important because that thin veil, the misread cues with distance become a bigger obstacle in building trust with your remote employees. So the big idea here is remote team members have become a larger percentage of today's workforce. It does take a different approach to lead a remote team member, but if you do it right, you can create engaged associates that will outperform your projected results. So process challenges, and we talk about leading a remote team in a couple different ways, and I want to introduce this in a couple ways. One is about process challenges, and that's the functional piece. The process means that I need to get something done, right? I need to reach a goal. That's the process side. In a little bit, we're going to talk more around the people needs when it comes to remote employees. And Wade and Lisa will be jumping in and out as we talk about these different things, adding their expertise. And the first thing about connecting in a process thing is communicating, even through the great technology we have today for doing that, is not the same as face-to-face. And the more we tend to move forward, like use that time just to drive home our point, again, there are pieces and parts that get lost through a technical world. because we don't have the time to question or check in and those kind of things. Staying on time becomes an issue. It takes a while for people to get connected and join in. I mean, it always takes a while for people to show up for meetings or conversations or whatever when it's live. But then you add the fact that you got to walk through whatever security pieces on a virtual meeting or a virtual conversation, and so we have an issue there, right? There could be instability with their connections, less than professional work environments that get playing into that staying on time. Talked to a friend of mine who had been working on a workshop, and it took this group 15 minutes to get connected out of his hour-long workshop. 15 minutes. And they were about 15 minutes after that they were in, and there was a chat in the thing. Is it always this terrible? So again, we need to plan, prepare for that, and that's part of the process. Staying on track as we go through that. When I'm leading or talking to somebody in a remote place, it's a lot harder to stay on track. If we're in the same room, there seems to be an energy connection when I'm with somebody else. Also, I always have the clarity of here's where we want to get out, what we want to get out of this call, that meeting, or whatever. Maybe even posted behind me so everybody's on that page. And again, whatever happens or whatever distractions that people have because they're not as engaged, like you may not be right now. So you go off to cat videos or whatever. So Lisa and Wade, any ideas here as far as process challenges that you've run into?
Well, I'm gonna talk a little bit about what you said about staying on time and when getting people set up. It's really important to respect people's time, and sometimes it's you should just have that 15 minutes ahead of time for everybody to get connected. And people really do appreciate that staying on time, who's there, when to start, and not people fumbling through. I'm not set up yet.
Yeah, great point. Thank you, Lisa. I think there's a personal motivation too. I don't know about you, but for me, it's harder for me to get up for a virtual meeting than it is a live meeting. I'm an extrovert. And so when I get in a room with somebody else, my energy grows. And it's just not the same through a technological device. But I called the meeting as a leader. I asked that person to engage to me. I owe them to be up for that meeting and to take as much time in preparation to make that encounter efficient. Okay.
And I want to add in here a little bit about personal motivation that, it's okay to pick up the phone and call people too. We do rely on Zoom and that, face-to-face kind of feel, but there's a lot to be said for that phone interaction as well that we often forget about. But it's really powerful when you can remember to get on the phone and call and talk to everybody. And the other thing on personal motivation is do go around the room and get everybody's input, because especially on virtual with the Zoom, it's not always easy to do, and it can take a lot of time and it can be really difficult. But if you have the structure in place, like you mentioned, that it goes quickly and everybody has a certain amount of time, it does go pretty good. So I just want to throw that in.
Hey, Wade, thank you. And you led me into the next one perfectly. Absolutely. One of the keys as a leader is if the more we can adapt our communication to the needs of the group. And what I mean by this on a technical side is some people prefer the phone call. Some people prefer Zoom. Some people prefer maybe texting or emailing. As long as it meets your objectives as the leader and you're able to convey your message, the better they'll receive it and commit to communicating back to you by doing that. Yep. And the biggest challenge anywhere is reaching your objective set. Technology creates that piece, or I should say, distance creates opportunity for us too. And we can have all the fancy bells and whistles, but if our objectives are not met, they won't know how to move forward, right? So make sure that you take time every once in a while to get feedback from your team. on how that works for them, how we're moving forward, whether it's one-on-one or it's a group setting. That way you'll know you hit the mark. So let's talk about, we talked about the task side of this, the challenges. Let's talk about the people side of challenges. And again, I want to bring in connections. People just in remote conversations just don't connect as well. The energy there. And the other big piece is I don't have the advantage of reading people's nonverbal communication. And if that's actually 55 to 70% of our communication, we're missing stuff. We could misread something, right? You say, "Hey, Rain, how you doing?" And I go, "Fine." Right? Or, "I'm not angry." But if you can't see that, right, or those pieces, and it is harder to pick up virtually, then we lose out on that and we make an assumption. Clarity is important, right? As we go through that, everybody needs to be on the same page. So with remote team, we have less time to get clear around where we're going. And here's what I mean by that. If I'm in-house as an employee, I can always stop into Wade's office and say, "Hey, Wade, here's what I got out of the meeting. Am I reading this right?" And he can either validate that or help me understand what the real meaning was. I was less likely as a remote employee to email my boss and admit that I didn't quite get everything, or to call them and say, hey. So again, I think that's pretty common with remote employees. Therefore, I go on making assumptions that this is the way we're going to move forward. Flexibility. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to add on the connection part. You know, it's always good to talk about families and kids or other things, sports, things that can create that connection as well. So I just wanted to reiterate that connections can be even deeper from an aspect of really connecting with people, their lives, and it's really more important as you get into the remote team to have that ability to build trust through those type of connections too. Just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah, love that ad, Wade. Thank you.
Wade, I agree with you, and you said back on a few minutes ago about how it's important to actually sometimes pick up the phone and make phone calls, even though you're doing the remote team thing. So that clarity and that connection, I really think helps bring a group together. When you have that, when you're doing a group Zoom meeting, when you have to call people together, I think that means a lot when you do that. So I think that clarity and that connection is so important.
Yeah, I agree. As a leader, you really, it's harder with a remote team because you have to remember those special events and those things that happen so that you continue to have that engagement because you don't have that personal body language like Rain had talked about. So yeah, it's good.
Very cool. Thank you. Appreciate that, Lisa and Wade. So we're going to talk a little bit about flexibility. And in flexibility, what I mean is the more we can be flexible around how we deliver the information so it meets different people's needs. And the first one's around behavioral or communication styles, understanding the different styles of your groups and the need within that. And that's a class in its own right. And I have information down below if you want to connect with me on that. But it's important to do that. Don't be calling everybody out thinking that they're ready to jump and come up with an answer right away. Some of your team may be the kind that needs to think about it and let it marinate for a while and aren't comfortable being called out. So the more we can adapt ourselves to meet those needs, the more commitment we will get moving forward. Learning needs or preferences are another thing, and ages, longevity, technical acumen. And Lisa, do you mind sharing with us? You told me a story about different people that come to classes or meetings.
Well, when you talked a little bit about behavioral, it's really important to know your group. And when you're with a live group, you can pick this up a lot easier. But with a remote group, and I kind of joke about it all the time, but I just say, you always have those people that want to come to class, the learners. You want them to be there. They're so happy to just learn anything, and you welcome that. But they're probably less than a quarter of the group. And then you have the people that, again, when you're doing teams, that I always call them vacationers. They were just happy to be any place. And when you kind of see them drifting, you say, hey, could you order me a cocktail too? Like, could you just keep me in the loop while you're vacationing there? But you try and bring them back in. And then you have people that are very learned, your scholars, people that have just a vast amount of knowledge, and you want them to share. You want them to share with the group. And, so like when you talk about behavioral, like, so who do you call on? Who do you get to jump in? But those people have so much to offer your group that could make it so interesting. As the leader, you have to say, who can you engage? And then, of course, you always have the people when you have a team meeting that were just told they just had to be there, no matter what. And they're going to sit there and they're going to give you the look, and they're going to go on. And you know what? You just want to wish them the best prison experience they ever had while they're being held up for that hour or whatever it is. But it's a matter of really just reading your people. And I'm so with you on the behavioral. You have to understand people's behavior in a meeting, and you got to be flexible, and most of all, have fun with it. Just have fun.
And I want to kick in on that too, Rain, because for those of you that haven't seen Rain's behavioral styles, it's really good to understand how to communicate with a driver versus how to communicate with an analytical person. Mm-hmm. And those two different people require a different way of communicating and a different way of listening and talking and understanding. So not having that ability to really deal or communicate or understand those behaviors is something you definitely need when you're a leader in a remote situation. So yeah, I just want to reinforce that. Do call Rain and understand more about that.
Yeah, about behavioral study. Yeah.
Yeah, very good. Thank you. Appreciate that, Lisa and Wade. So support that they just gave me is exactly another thing here. The bottom three here are really the underlying pieces as a leader with remote team members, because we are talking about trust, and trust is built through support. For some leaders, a remote employee often means out of sight, out of mind, and it's not like a love relationship where distance makes the heart grow fonder. You get forgot at times, and we need to remember they're important members of our team. So I asked myself some questions. How differently do I treat my local team versus those that are working remotely? And how can I bring some of those same elements to those connections? There's trust questions we'll ask ourselves as a leader. Do I trust that they're committed to the goals and strategies? Do I trust they're putting in the expected effort to achieve those goals? Do I trust their motives? Will they shortcut a strategy for results or make it easier on them? Wade, I know you had a remote team for many years. Did those questions run to your mind?
You hit the nail on the head. I had 15 folks, 20 states, a lot of traveling. And really the key is that as a leader, whether you made the mistake or not, or it's a perceived mistake, it's always good to call it out, put it out in the open and apologize and move forward, because with a remote team, there is a dynamic that can happen behind the scenes. And that building of trust happens when, leaders eat last, when leaders really lean in and make sure that they're holding themselves accountable just as much as the team. And if the team falls, that they take the leadership role and understand that they are part of the reason why the team didn't get to that objective that they had hoped to get to. So really building that trust all comes down to the leader and your style of leadership, and building trust by making sure that you're leading by example. Yeah.
Yeah. And Lisa, you also had that kind of experience. Anything to add on trust and leadership?
My experience with remote groups were like what you said earlier, when you didn't maybe quite get something, you weren't always that person that would reach out. And when somebody is not willing to, open up and talk to as a leader, like I said, follow up with people and do stuff like that, it creates a distance. Sure. And you really have to be able to trust that person and trust that any kind of communication, have any understanding that you need is really important to do that. And people have to feel it. They have to know that you mean it.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
I want to kick in too, because you always get this when you're leading a remote team is like
Yeah.
people in the company are like, well, they're not doing anything.
Right.
They're
Yeah.
busy with their family life. Right? And I think COVID has really helped people understand that that is not true. People can be more productive having a remote team, but just don't have that mindset that people aren't working hard and doing what they need to do. And don't have the mindset, like Rain said earlier, that you're micromanaging. Just have normal expectations and follow up to make sure that, you know, what's being committed to by people is actually happening in a way that's positive and not in a mistrustful way. So I just want to throw that out there.
Yeah, absolutely. So that leads us into some questions we can ask ourselves as a leader. Are those trust concerns there because of something they actually did, the associate actually did or did not do? Or are they there because we have difficulty trusting others? I used to do an exercise. I used to call it the trust exercise. And I'd say, okay, get a piece of paper out. And I want you, and this was for a leadership group, I want you to list the people in your life that you really trust. And it was amazing how short most people's lists were. And they didn't think that going in. And I said, wow, that must be an important group of people to earn your trust like that on such a short list, right? So if I asked your entire team, do you think you'd be on their list?
Hope so.
Right?
Yeah.
Right?
That's right. That's the answer they're hoping. But
Yeah.
in reality,
know.
they know they wouldn't be, you know? So the idea of this is my next question is, so what did you do to earn that trust?
There you go.
Right? What have I done lately to earn that trust? Trust is really a tricky thing. We can lose it in a heartbeat and it takes years to build.
That's
And it's
right.
interesting when you ask people what is trust, define trust for certain folks, and it may be very different. So it's really good to level set and say this is what trust is for the team.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Good point, Wade. So these are what I call my Fab Five as far as suggested solutions with remote teams. Some are things that I actually had and applied. Some things are new that I learned during COVID. So let's start with clarity. We've talked about that. One is to create a team charter. And a team charter, what I mean by that, it has to have the vision, the overall vision of what you want to do and maybe a mission statement. And then the strategy, your major goals and the strategies, but also in there needs to be some ground rules. What would be effective? And I think that's where you might even have the conversation that Wade talked about trust. And individually with each person, what does trust mean to you as you go through, right? Or you could have a collaborative exercise. But you want to create this team charter collaboratively. The more you do that, the more commitment you will have to the charter, and you won't have to police it. The team will police it themselves. They'll take accountability for doing that. Availability is another one. Again, since you're not there with these remote team members, one of the coolest things I saw was setting regular open social time hours. So maybe on Thursdays from 4:30 to 5:30, I open up that time only for my remote team members to drop in, to ask me about something, talk about something, and it didn't even have to be work related. Now, it's not a forced thing that, oh, wow, Lisa didn't check in during this time. I wonder what's wrong. No, it's an opportunity for Lisa if she has something or wants to, or just to give that piece. And it's amazing. I mean, you can have work going while you're there. You just don't have to sit staring at the screen, right? Waiting for somebody to enter your Zoom room. But you can have work going. And when it says, can you let this person in your room? Then I make sure that work is totally aside. I'm 100% focused on the individual just entered the room. Connection, I want to go back to the interpersonal relationships and understanding behavioral or communication styles. And again, I have my information down below. That is the most important gift I ever received in learning, was figuring out how to identify somebody's style, being able to understand what their needs are, and then making changes in my behavior to meet those needs from a place where we both benefit, right? I'm making that. And generally, think about that. We're reaching out to connect with somebody. There's a reason we're doing that. Other words, we do it ourselves or we Google it, right? So there's a reason. So I want that person to feel comfortable as we go in. Again, day-long class, great fun opportunity. Contact me if you want to know more. Flipped. So this refers more to if you have a learning or training or even conversation maybe about understanding new regulations or whatever. You actually send the information out to them ahead of time and they digest it, whether it's through video, podcast, reading, or whatever. And then we come to the meeting ready to discuss it. What did you get out of it? What did you like? What worked? What challenges do you have? And then we can, at the end, walk away and complete our own game plan on how we want to move forward with it. That way, that time is interactive while we're virtual.
You know, Rain, I've done that before, sent out pre-work, and it really helped keep the group together. So what I did was after I gave everybody like pre-work so they all knew what we were talk about, I assigned everybody one question and it kept the whole group on schedule and on time. And I think everybody appreciated it and then everybody actually had something to say.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah,
Thanks.
I want to add in too, just the funness of having a breakout room and collaborating and like having that group when they send it out that they can get together on Zoom or get together via phone and work on it and then bring it together, like you said, and collaborate in those breakout rooms. It's a great idea. It's something different. I like it.
Absolutely. And to lead into that credibility, again, know your technology and know the platforms that you're going to use well enough so it doesn't take away from your presentation. Right. And that's something that was a real growth area for me. As Wade and Lisa both know, my technological prowess was not there. But I got to the point and practiced to the point so that I was comfortable and it didn't take away from my presentation.
Yeah, so, and there's a lot of, I just want to add on that credibility part in technology that there's a lot of great tools out there now, like Calendly to make an appointment super easy. You don't have to go back and forth on scheduling calendars, which takes a lot of time and frustration with remote team members. And then also just, there's Teams, there's Zoom, there's a whole bunch of different products, but usually they all have a whiteboard. And using the whiteboard to capture ideas in parking lots and get all those squirrels organized is really a good thing too.
Very cool. Thank you. So we have some key takeaways. And in this one, I'm going to get Wade and Lisa involved with some other pieces as they go through. So again, we're looking to get engaged, motivated, and responsible team members. And so we have a focus on leadership. We have a focus on team objectives. Under the leadership, making sure that we, again, honor the diversity in the team, whether it's gender, ages, religious beliefs, cultural beliefs, behavioral styles. We need to honor that. Purposely engage all team members, building trust and transparency. Lisa talked about exercise that she could get everybody involved in. And respectively support individual needs through listening and coaching. I can't tell you how important that is because some people will be reluctant to bring things up in a group. And the best way we can build trust between us and them is to do that. And some people, it's just a matter of, I guess, building their self-respect as they go through that. Team objectives, make sure you're consistent. Consistency builds trust too. Hey, we're going to have a meeting on this date, this time, and then hold that. Now, if there's no reason to have the meeting once you get there, say, hey, you know what? Unless somebody has an objective, I'm canceling the meeting because I don't have anything to add, or I'm going to cut it to a 5-10 minute huddle, right? But be sure you start and end on time because people have other obligations they're counting on getting to. And if the meeting drags past time, you're going to lose them. Send a clear message informing the team of the expected outcomes ahead of time. I love that with meetings when I knew the objective of the meeting ahead of time. And then make sure, again, that team charter might be on every email that goes out about a meeting, right? A conversation, so it reminds people of that, or have it at least someplace where that might be the kickstart to your PowerPoint presentations, just to have that in your opening screen. So as people are joining the meeting, they can see that. And keep the team involved through a collaborative process to build commitment. Lisa and Wade, what other things do you have to add on to that?
Well,
Well,
I'm just going to
go
go
ahead.
back to your, okay, you go
Yeah, go
first.
ahead. No, go ahead, Lisa. Go for it.
I was just gonna go back to what we originally started talking about being engaged and motivated and being responsible. I think all those aspects, as you're being the leader, you have to take them into consideration and know your group or learn your group and how to keep people engaged and motivated. And I think we've talked about a lot of different ways to do it, but there is a responsibility as the leader to be open, like you said, listen and be transparent. I think there is that responsibility to actually keeping your group motivated, that they want to be there, that they come. And I've been part of a lot of groups where I look forward to the meeting. I think they're engaging, so it's changing it up. So
Yeah, that's a great point. And I would add, for me, I've had the pleasure of leading teams in a multi-billion-dollar company and as well as a small family company. And everything holds true when you think about clarity and engagement. If the team is clear about who's working on what and what the goals are, that builds engagement, that builds responsibility. You don't have to micromanage. Everybody knows who's working on what, and we all know that that's driving towards a common goal and a common strategy. And that just really builds that engagement and responsibility process. From a leadership point of view, it's easier to manage, and your discussions all around roadblocks and how you as the leader can help eliminate the roadblocks that
roadblock.
might get in the way. Yeah, so get rid of the roadblock. And then the other thing is just reiterating communication. Don't hesitate to talk as much as you can with everybody at least once a week. It's super important. You don't want to forget anybody, like Rain said, because the thought that you didn't talk to anybody during the week, you didn't talk to your leader, from a team member standpoint, is just really rough. It's really good to have that inclusive feeling. In an office, you got an open door, somebody can come and visit you. Have that same sort of time, from 1 to 2 o'clock on this day, my phone is open, please call, or definitely as a leader, reach out and call.
Yep.
That's all I got.
Cool. Thank you so much. That's quite a bit. So I guess for me, I always felt that I build trust with other people when I'm focused outward versus inward. So asking myself the question, is this for me or is it for them? Right?
Yeah.
So I do have to say, I as a remote employee, I always felt I owed my leader more because I was a remote employee. And that's because I had the benefit of being able to live where I wanted. And therefore, I wasn't going to let them down. Right? That's the engagement, the motivation, and the responsibility we're looking in for team members. And I'm a human being. I'm like anyone else. I could flip when the commitment wasn't there, or I was being micromanaged, or I was being manipulated. That could flip pretty easy. And that's the same for a lot of other folks. So let me land the plane on this, right? I want to share with you some upcoming events that I have. I have these retreats that I hold in the mountains of Colorado, Estes Park, Colorado. We rent a cabin, and it's a small boutique retreat with 6, sometimes even 3 individuals in the program. One is my people leadership program, focus on EQ, personal mission statements, being able to balance your life. Another one's all about connecting with others, which we spent a lot of time talking on during this presentation, and behavioral styles and understanding how to use that effectively, as well as listening. And then building your team objectives. That's for an intact team. So if you bring an intact team of 6 people together or 12 people together, and we can make that team more effective by understanding the 5 dysfunctions and how to work through that. So information there at my website, getlifeandbalance.com. Look under the offerings, drop down and retreats, and connect with me on that.
I just want to add,
yeah.
I just want to add one more thing. Since I have been to your people retreat, and that was probably the catalyst that created Link Supply Chains, I just want to reinforce how that personal mission statement is so powerful, and how understanding your behavioral EQ, because you asked so many people in my past about how they interpret or perceive the behavior EQ. And it's just a fantastic event. Really appreciate that. So I just want to throw that out there.
Well, thank you, Wade. I appreciate that. So Ken, I'm coming back to you. I want to know if we have any questions from the group.
Actually, we do have a couple of questions. I know from our time point of view, we're going to probably have to keep this down to just a couple, but they both kind of centered around, I think, what you've already been talking about. But I think it's a good place to end today's class. The first one, what are the characteristics of a good remote team leader? Not all, each one of you want to give a couple. Rain, if you want to handle that one.
No, yeah, I'd love to hear from Wade and Lisa on each one of these. So again, I think one of the keys here is just staying open to understanding others' perspectives and the value of others' perspectives. Your team members have great gifts to offer. Give them an opportunity to do that.
For me, it's, you know, with your team, always play your strengths. So look at everybody's strengths on your team and really play the strengths of all your team members. It'll help them engagement. It'll help in a lot of ways.
And for me, it's listening and engagement. Listen to what people are saying, really listen intently, and then get people engaged.
Love it. Love it.
Fantastic. All right. And again, last question here. It kind of goes on the same end, but on the other side, looking at the team, what does a good high performance remote team look like?
So great question, Ken. And that's not a whole lot different from an intact team, you know, one that's close. But the issues that we talked about get in the way. So I'm talking about a team that trusts each other enough to be able to call out situations, not pick on individuals, but call out situations and always have each other's back as they go through and do that, to make sure that they're there for each other. I think Wade likes the term fall on a sword for their teammate. But yeah, that's the idea.
And for me, I would say credibility, you know, besides what Rain put forth, I would also add credibility as a team, right? So they understand what they do provide for the organization. And then the organization sees that team as a amazing, credible team that can get things done in a very efficient way with great communication, great engagement. So that would be my add.
And I agree with Rain. I think what brings a group together, get a well-motivated group, is that they actually contact each other outside the group. They actually contact each other to talk about, ask questions, not afraid to that, and like you said, support each other. So I think that brings a well-rounded group together when they continue the conversation.
Yeah.
And I would add too that I think that question is a great question for any leader before you take on a remote team, or if you do have a remote team. Answer that question for yourself and then ask your team and see if that matches.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So one more little add as we land this one, and Ken, I'm going to turn it over to you after this. So always remote teams and their effectiveness are going to be measured by numbers. I mean, that's just where people go. But as a leader, if we wait for the numbers, that's a result of behaviors that happened before. And if we wait for the numbers, it's too late. We need to look for and stay connected with our team so that we can look for those behaviors that might lead to the numbers we don't want, right? And start working and coaching people along that way. So that's where I want to kind of leave it. Ken, I'll let you take us out.
All right. Again, always pleasantly, I guess I'm always amazed by how much you guys can cover in such a short amount of time. I mean, this really gets into it. I think it answers a lot of people's questions. But I did want to put a note out. If you did have any questions and we didn't touch on it today, please reach out to Rain. You see his email. There's his phone number. Please give him a call or an email. And in conclusion, again, thank you all. This was amazing. Rain, Lisa, Wade. Again, so informative. What a great masterclass. And lastly, before we end everything, I want to make sure to thank Link Supply Chains and Life in Balance for sponsoring today's webinar. Please join us for our next webinar. how to make the leap to e-commerce easy. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.